to cloud. Okay. Record down here. Good conference link. Okay, I guess we're recording down here too. Yep, we are. Okay, sounds good. It come on at exactly 6 p.m. Supposed to do, isn't it? Here we go. We're live. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Roger Paul. Oops, I need to glue this too. Okay, hello, everyone. This is Dr. Roger Paul, and tonight we're going to start a new paper, paper 123 from the Urantia Book, The Early Childhood of Jesus, and that starts on page 1355 of the original book, or paper 12301 on all the rest of the books. So let's, I stopped doing the prayers at the beginning of the movies, at the beginning of the meetings, because I got a couple complaints about people wanting to get right into the meeting stuff. So, God, thank you for bringing us together. Amen. So,
Amen.
we'll say our prayer of acceptance at the end. So let's get started here. This is a picture by Nicolas Poussin. It's French from 1594. It's the Holy Family. I thought it was pretty picture. And see if I can go here. And this is the early childhood of Jesus. Okay. Let me get going here. Let me look at my directions here. Diane, you want to do our first paragraph there? Can you see that?
Yeah,
okay?
I can.
I can't see you though.
I can see you.
There we go. Let's do it this way. Oops, wrong direction. There we go. Now we can see. Okay.
Okay. The early childhood of Jesus.
You want to mute Roger?
Okay. Owing to the uncertainties and anxieties of their sojourn in Bethlehem, Mary did not wean the babe until they had arrived safely in Alexandria, where the family was able to settle down to a normal life. They lived with kinsfolk, and Joseph was well able to support his family as he secured work shortly after their arrival. He was employed as a carpenter for several months and then elevated to the position of foreman of a large group of workmen employed on one of the public buildings then in process of construction. This new experience gave him the idea of becoming a contractor and a builder after their return to Nazareth.
How old was baby Jesus?
About a year old at this point.
Yeah.
A year.
Yeah, a little over a year old at this point when they were leaving for Alexandria, right? Because when he was about a year old, that's when Herod decided to kill all the babies. Okay, so that's around that time, from what I understand. So she didn't wean him from breastfeeding until that point because they probably didn't have availability on their trip, of milk from, either sheep or cows or anything like that. So that makes sense. So she waited till she got to Alexandria. All right, let's see here. Let me go forward one. Oops, I think I just went back instead of forward. Okay. One more time, y'all. Give me a sec. Too many computers to keep up with. Let's see, who's next up? I believe you are, Rodney, if I look at this correctly.
I just did something and the whole page
is gone. Okay, well, Pam, would you take the next one so he can have time to get his straightened out?
Sure. All through these early years of Jesus' helpless infancy, Mary maintained one long and constant vigil, lest anything befall her child which might jeopardize his welfare or in any way interfere with his future mission on earth. No mother was ever more devoted to her child. In the home where Jesus chanced to be there, there were two other children about his age and among and among the near neighbors, there were 6 others whose ages were sufficiently near his own to make them acceptable playfellows. At first, Mary was disposed to keep Jesus close by her side. She feared something might happen to him if he were allowed to play in the garden with the other children. But Joseph, with the assistance of his kinsfolk, was able to convince her that such a course would deprive Jesus of the helpful experience of learning how to adjust himself to children of his own age. And Mary, realizing that such a program of undue sheltering and unusual protection might tend to make him self-conscious and somewhat self-centered, finally gave assent to the plan of permitting the child of promise to grow up just like any other child. And though she was obedient to this decision, she made it her business always to be on watch while the little folks were at play about the house or in the garden. Only an affectionate mother can know the burden that Mary carried in her heart for the safety of her son during these years of his infancy and early childhood.
And if y'all think about it, that was the plan to start out with, right? Is that Jesus live a normal life. And the only way he could do that is have children to play with and go about and take all the chances that children take as they're growing up for injury and things like that, right?
Yeah.
All right, and this is the Madonna and Child by Leonardo da Vinci. I might recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see here. Rodney, did you get your screen
Yes.
back? Okay, you want to take the next one?
Throughout the 2 years of their sojourn at Alexandria, Jesus enjoyed good health and continued to grow normally. Aside from a few friends and relatives, no one was told about Jesus as being a, quote, child of promise. One of Joseph's relatives revealed this to a few friends in Memphis, descendants of the distant
Akhenaten.
Akhenaten,
Yeah.
Akhenaten, and they, with a small group of Alexandrian believers, assembled at the palatial home of Joseph's relative benefactor a short time before the return to Palestine to wish the Nazareth family well and to pay their respects to the child. On this occasion, the assembled friends presented Jesus with a complete copy of the Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures. But this copy of the Jewish sacred writings was not placed in Joseph's hands until both he and Mary had finally declined the invitation of their Memphis and Alexandrian friends to remain in Egypt. These believers insisted that the child of destiny would be able to exert a far greater world influence as a resident of Alexandria than any designated place in Palestine. These persuasions delayed their departure for Palestine for some time after they received the news of Herod's death.
Okay, so a lot of things happened when Joseph and Mary was in Alexandria. Number one, they got to know, Joseph's relatives and Mary's relatives fairly well, and basically Joseph got the idea to become a contractor when he went back home. It's going to tell us that in the next paragraph, I believe. But what also happened there is when they got ready to leave, they gave Joseph and Mary a complete copy of the scriptures in Greek. So as Jesus was growing up, he got to learn the Greek scriptures very, very well, because it was some time before he turned that over to the synagogue there in where they lived. And so he got the opportunity to study it more than the average person. And he learned not only how to read in Greek, but also in Hebrew at the same time, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
So who taught him the Greek? Do they tell us?
They don't really tell us
His father.
His father probably spoke Greek fairly well.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, because he was a contractor. This is Bernardo Luini, 1485 to 1532. This is supposed to be the Madonna child too. Okay, let's go on. Lech, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. And Joseph and Mary finally took leave of Alexandria on a boat belonging to their friend Ezraim, bound to Joppa, arriving at that port late in August of the year 4 BC. They went directly to Bethlehem, where they spent the entire month of September in council with their friends and relatives concerning whether they should remain there or return to Nazareth.
Okay, so they had to decide whether they were going to stay in Bethlehem or go back to Nazareth, and they already had a house built in Nazareth, so it made sense to Joseph to take them home to Nazareth, and that's why they didn't end up staying in Bethlehem. And this is the interesting picture of this trip, and let me get this over here on mine so I can explain something to y'all. It's a little bit bigger on mine over here. Okay, and you'll notice here that in this picture, it's got Alexandria over here on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Y'all see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm highlighting the wrong picture. This one here. Okay, and you can see here where Bethlehem is over here, and they traveled by land, going through Tanis, right? And then on the way back, they took a boat and they ended up back in Bethlehem before they went back to Nazareth, which is above this, okay, on this map. But it says here they had a friend, a friend of theirs had a boat, the friend named Ezrion, and he was bound for Joppa on the coast. Joppa is basically right here, up in the corner. Do y'all see that?
Yeah.
Okay, and so they got a ride with him, and then they went back for a whole month to Bethlehem before they went back to Nazareth, right? You know, it's kind of interesting to see this because of all the stuff that's going on in Palestine right now in Jerusalem. To see this old picture and see how close Egypt was to Jerusalem, you know. It's not all that far. It's when we compare it to our places here, like we're in Georgia, it'd be like us taking a trip to Virginia or something, something along that line. Right? You go back up here to the next one. All right, dear, I believe you're up again.
Okay. Mary had never fully given up the idea that Jesus ought to grow up in Bethlehem, the city of David. Joseph did not really believe that their son was to become a kingly deliverer of Israel. Besides, he knew that he himself was not really a descendant of David, that his being reckoned among the offspring of David was due to the adoption of one of his ancestors into the Davidic line of descent. Mary, of course, thought the city of David was the most appropriate place in which the new candidate for David's throne could be reared. But Joseph preferred to take chances with Herod Antipas rather than with his brother Archelaus. He entertained great fears for the child's safety in Bethlehem or in any other city in Judea, and surmised that Archelaus would be more likely to pursue the menacing policies of his father Herod that would Antipas that wood Antipas in Galilee. And besides all these reasons, Joseph was outspoken in his preference for Galilee as a better place in which to rear and educate the child. But it required 3 weeks to overcome Mary's objections. Yeah, yay, yay, mother.
Hard-headed.
Okay, so it's important for us to understand these two brothers that were rulers, right? First, we had Archelaus over where they, if they stayed in Bethlehem, would have been their ruler, right? But since they went back to Galilee, which was Herod's, the other Herod, the later Herod, was in charge of that, they felt safer with him than they did with Archelaus. So that's why they went back to Galilee too, because they felt fairly comfortable that Jesus would be comfortable there or safe there. Okay, all right. All these things are important to understand, how these things worked out. Okay, Pam, why don't you take next, since we started that I can keep track of it.
Okay. By the 1st of October, Joseph had convinced Mary and all their friends that it was best for them to return to Nazareth. Accordingly, early in October 4 BC, they departed for Bethlehem for Nazareth, going by way of Lydda and Scythopolis.
Scythopolis.
Say it again?
Scythopolis.
Scythopolis.
Okay.
They started out early one Sunday morning, Mary and the child riding on their newly acquired beast of burden, while Joseph and 5 accompanying kinsmen proceeded on foot. Joseph's relatives refused to permit them to make the trip to Nazareth alone. They feared to go to Galilee by Jerusalem and the Jordan Valley, and the western routes were not altogether safe for 2 lone travelers with a child of tender years.
Okay, so think about it this way, y'all. If they arrived in 4 BC, all right, this is 4 BC. We're going backward up to this point. So we're talking about from 7 BC when he was born to 4 BC. Okay, so little bit over 3 years. So it was almost 3 years before they finally got home to Bethlehem. Okay, so that means they stayed a year in Bethlehem before they left, and then they went for about 2 years into Alexandria, and then they finally got back to Bethlehem. Okay, so that would have made Jesus around a little over 3 years old. Okay, all right, back to Nazareth. Rodney, would you take the next one?
Yes. 1. Back in Nazareth. On the 4th day of the journey, the party reached its destination in safety. They arrived unannounced at the Nazareth home, which had been occupied for more than 3 years by one of Joseph's married brothers, who was indeed surprised to see them.
Mm-hmm.
So quietly had they gone about their business that neither the family of Joseph nor that of Mary knew that they had even left Alexandria. The next day, Joseph's brother moved his family and Mary, for the first time since Jesus' birth, settled down with their little family to enjoy life in their own home. In less than a week, Joseph secured work as a carpenter, and they were supremely happy.
Okay, so his brother had lived in the house while they were gone a little over 3 years. So when they came back, they had to move him out so that they could have their house back, right? And this is according to tradition, the church was built on the side of the home of Joseph and Mary. So that's what this picture is about. Okay, so this church was built on what the site they believe was of Joseph and Mary. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Letch, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. Jesus was about 3 years and 2 months old at the time of their return to Nazareth. He had stood all these travels very well and was in excellent health and full of childish glee and excitement at having premises of his own to run about in and to enjoy. But he greatly missed the association of his Alexandrian playmates.
So I'm sure they became great friends, he became great friends with the children where they were staying at. So he's going to miss those children for a little while until he gets to know the children in Nazareth. All right. We're back to you, dear.
Okay. On the way to Nazareth, Joseph had persuaded Mary that it would be unwise to spread the word among their Galilean friends and relatives that Jesus was a child of promise. They agreed to refrain from all mention of these matters to anyone, and they were both very faithful in keeping this promise.
Okay, so they made a pact with each other to not spread the word that Jesus was a child of promise, or what they believed was going to be the Messiah. And here's a picture from Nazareth today with a flock of sheep. So, okay. Pam, would you take the next one, please?
Jesus' entire 4th year was a period of normal physical development and of unusual mental activity. Meantime, he had formed a very close attachment for a neighbor boy about his own age named Jacob. Jesus and Jacob were always happy in their play, and they grew up to be great friends and loyal companions.
And it's this same Jacob that would defend Jesus later on in his life. So it's a good meeting, right? All right. Rodney, would you take the next one?
Yes. The next important event in the life of this Nazareth family was the birth of the second child, James, in the early morning hours of April the 2nd, 3 BC. Jesus was thrilled by the thought of having a baby brother, and he would stand around by the hour just to observe the baby's early activity.
Okay, interesting point about this is James did not believe in Jesus's mission at first. And it wasn't until after the crucifixion that James became a believer and became active and a head of the church. So it's kind of interesting. It's hard to convince your own family that you are special in any way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Fletch, would you take the next one?
Okay. It was midsummer of this same year that Joseph built a small workshop close to the village spring and near the caravan tarrying lot. After this, he did very little carpenter work by the day. He had as associates 2 of his brothers and several other mechanics, whom he sent out to work while he remained at the shop, making yokes and plows and doing other woodwork. He also did some work in leather and with rope and canvas. And Jesus, as he grew up, when not at school, spent his time about equally between helping his mother with home duties and watching his father work at the shop, meanwhile listening to the conversation and gossip of the caravan conductors and passengers from the 4 corners of the earth.
And that's where Jesus picked up many of his languages, right? The many languages that he taught, close to the caravan shop. All right. Let's see here. Let me take one, dear, so you can have a break. In July of this year, 1 month before Jesus was 4 years old, an outbreak of malignant intestinal trouble spread all over Nazareth from contact with the caravan travelers. Mary became so alarmed by the danger of Jesus being exposed to this epidemic of disease that she bundled up both her children and fled to the country home of her brother, several miles south of Nazareth on the Megiddo road near Sarid. They did not return to Nazareth for more than 2 months. Jesus greatly enjoyed this, his first experience on the farm.
That he did.
Yeah, and this is a map, shows where he left his home, and the first visit he went was to his uncle's fishing business at home on the Sea of Galilee, right? But when they came back, he made the trip to his uncle Mary's brother's farm right there. You see that? And this is the outlook, hilltop outlook they spoke of in the paper too. This is from map number 2. All right, the 5th year, and you're back up.
2. The 5th year, 2 BC. And something more than a year after the return to Nazareth, the boy Jesus arrived at the age of his first personal and wholehearted moral decision. And there came to abide with him a thought adjuster, a divine gift of the Paradise Father, which had aforetime served with Melchizedek, thus gaining the experience of functioning in connection with the incarnation of a supermortal being living in the likeness of mortal flesh. This event occurred on February 11, 2 BC. Jesus was no more aware of the coming of the divine monitor than are the millions upon millions of other children who before and since that day have likewise received these thought adjusters to indwell their minds and work for the ultimate spiritualization of these minds and the eternal survival of their evolving immortal souls.
You're on mute.
Okay, try this again. Something important to point out here is the fact that Jesus received his thought adjuster just exactly like we do as children, right? At about 5 years old or a little older. And as he made that first decision, the thought adjuster came, and it was the thought adjuster that had served in Melchizedek, right? Many, many years ago. Well, that didn't transpose very well, did it?
Roger,
Yes,
what is he, 4.5?
almost 5, I believe.
Oh,
when that
February
happened.
11th.
Yeah. He probably may have been about 4.5, a little bit early for him.
And then I guess it's important to know that Michael did not receive this adjuster.
No, Jesus did, right? The human Jesus.
Okay.
And this is really important that we know this, because it indicates that Michael, on his bestowal, went through the exact same experience of every other mortal. It wasn't anything special, right? Other than the fact that thought adjuster had been had served Melchizedek, right? And so since he had served him, back, 1900 years before this, he had experience from that. But that thought adjuster wouldn't have given Jesus any more advantage than any other thought adjuster, right? Because all thought adjusters are the same. But the important point is here, the fact that when he did his bestowal, it was exactly like every other mortal, just like every other creator son that has to do this. Okay, so he's living a life of human being just like everybody else did. And that's why it was so important that the two midwayers assigned to Jesus's safety were not allowed to interfere. Now, if he got accidentally killed or something like that, they were not allowed to step in unless they had direct orders from Gabriel himself. Okay, so he lived the dangerous life of a child, just like all of our children live dangerous lives when they're growing up. The accidents of time can happen. So, that's why parents have to watch out for their children, make sure that they're safe. Okay, so I wanted to make that point. So he got his thought adjuster just like we do, right? That's my hand you're biting there. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Did you just read it? Yeah. Pam, would you take the next one, please?
Mhm. On this day in February, the direct and personal supervision of the universe rulers, as it was related to the integrity of the childlike incarnation of Michael, terminated. From that time on, throughout the human unfolding of the incarnation, the guardianship of Jesus was destined to rest in the keeping of his indwelling adjuster and the associated seraphic guardians, supplemented from time to time by the ministry of midway creatures assigned for the performance of certain definite duties in accordance with the instruction of their planetary superiors.
So he had the same beings watching over him as we did, basically. Okay. And they make a point to tell us that so that we didn't assume anything in the bestowal that was not true. All right. So let's see, Rodney, would you take the next, please?
Yes. Jesus was 5 years old in August of this year, and we will, therefore, refer to this as his 5th calendar year of life. And this year, 2 BC, a little more than 1 month before his 5th birthday anniversary, Jesus was made very happy by the coming of his sister, Miriam, who was born on the night of July 11th. During the evening of the following day, Jesus had a long talk with his Father concerning the manner in which various groups of living things are born into the world as separate individuals. The most valuable part of Jesus' early education was secured from his parents in answer to his thoughtful and searching inquiries. Joseph never failed to do his full duty in taking pains and spending time answering the boy's numerous questions. From the time Jesus was 5 years old until he was 10, he was one continuous question mark. While Joseph and Mary could not always answer his questions, they never failed fully to discuss his inquiry, and in every other possible way to assist him in his efforts to reach a satisfactory solution of the problem which his alert mind had suggested.
So you can only imagine how many questions Jesus had as he was growing up. You know, he wanted to know about everything, just like
Of
most
course.
children
Yeah,
do.
most children are like that.
Yeah, and you know, his father kept full time answering questions that he could, and some of them he just could not. You know, and he would tell him from time to time, son, I really do not know." You know, so um, that's normal. Okay, Letch, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. Since returning to Nazareth, theirs had been a busy household, and Joseph had been unusually occupied building his new shop and getting his business started again. So fully was he occupied that he had found no time to build a cradle for James. But this was corrected long before Miriam came, so that she had a very comfortable crib in which to nestle while the family admired her. And the child Jesus heartily entered into all these natural and normal home experiences. He greatly enjoyed his little brother and his baby sister and was of great help to Mary in their care.
But he got the experience of raising kids or being there with brothers and sisters, like everyone does, right? All right. It's interesting in this next paragraph how they break this down for the Jewish family. Diane, would you take the next one?
There were few homes in the Gentile world of those days that could give a child a better intellectual, moral, and religious training than the Jewish homes of Galilee. These Jews had a systematic program for rearing and educating their children. They divided a child's life into 7 stages. 1, the newborn child, the first to the 8th day. 2, the suckling child. 3, the weaned child. 4, the period of dependence on the mother, lasting up to the end of the 5th year. 5, the beginning independence of the child, and with sons, the father assuming responsibility for their education. 6, the adolescent youths and maidens. 7, the young men and the young women.
So it sounds like they definitely had everything categorized, didn't it?
Yeah.
Properly, and so they raised the children according to these concepts. All right, Pam, would you take the next one, please?
It was the custom of the Galilean Jews for the mother to bear the responsibility for a child's training until the 5th birthday, and then, if the child were a boy, to hold the father responsible for the lad's education from that time on. This year, therefore, Jesus entered upon the 5th stage of a Galilean Jewish child's career, and accordingly, on August 21, 2 BC, Mary formally turned him over to Joseph for further instruction.
Okay, here he is. He's yours.
I wonder if they have like a special dinner and they make it, a formal.
Probably.
Formal, yeah, probably. So this is a picture of Galilee from today too.
Galilee.
Yeah.
I wonder which part.
It's supposed to be
Which town in Galilee?
where Jesus lived.
Oh, Nazareth?
Nazareth, yeah.
For real?
Yeah. That's what it's supposed to look like now. Okay. It's from somebody that actually went there. All right, I went past it. Okay, Rodney, would you take this?
Though Joseph was now assuming that direct responsibility for Jesus' intellectual and religious education, his mother still interested herself in his home training. She taught him to know and care for the vines and the flowers growing about the garden walls, which completely surrounded the home plot. She also provided on the roof of the house, which was called the summer bedroom, shallow boxes of sand in which Jesus worked out maps and did much of his early practice at writing Aramaic, Greek, and later on Hebrew, for in time he learned to read, write, and speak fluently all 3 languages.
Okay, so Jesus, as he was growing up, would read and write all 3 of these in the sand up on top of the hill. And this is an example from Nazareth itself of some of the foliage in Nazareth. This particular one here in this picture would be what Jesus might have seen as he looked at his bedroom wall.
It looks like poppies.
They do, don't they? And then here's some other type of flowers and stuff that grow there in Nazareth, And it's kind of funny because this tree almost looks like the cherry tree out in my front yard.
Oh, we don't see a tree.
Oh, sorry. I did one, didn't do the other. This is the other flowers.
Yeah.
And the little red blossoms on the tree looks just like the ones out in my house, right in front of my house. So thought you'd like to see some foliage from that area. You see what it actually looked like. All right. Let's see here. Latch, would you take the next one, please?
Yes. Jesus appeared to be a well-nigh perfect child physically and continued to make normal progress mentally and emotionally. He experienced a mild digestive upset, his first minor illness, in the latter part of his 5th calendar year.
Okay, so he had the normal growing pains of every, just like every other child, and so he ended up getting little bit of a intestinal thing at one point. All right. You're back up. I don't know what that dinging
That
is.
being, yeah.
So
Though
Joseph,
Joseph and Mary often talked about the future of their eldest child, had you been there, you would only have observed the growing up of a normal, healthy, carefree, but exceedingly inquisitive child of that time and place.
Uh-oh. There's Carrie.
Roger, you're on mute.
Roger, you're muted.
Where do I start again?
Hmm.
So he was just like most all other children of that day and age, right? And so he learned to grow up just like everybody else does. Okay, so this is his 6th calendar year, which would be 1 BC. Okay, we have to keep all this in mind because the way the Catholic Church started, taking back, when they thought Jesus was born and that sort of thing. So we have a change here, between 1 BC and 180, right? Which AD would be after death, but in reality, they all fit together, right? Because of the way it was done, which is wrong. Okay. Rodney, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. I think I just read, but
Did you just read?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, hang on here. Let's see who's that. And Letch is next then, and then Gary.
Okay.
Hey, Gary.
Hey.
Events of the 6th year. Already with his mother's help, Jesus had mastered the Galilean dialect of the Aramaic tongue, and now his father began teaching him Greek. Mary spoke little Greek, but Joseph was a fluent speaker of both Aramaic and Greek. The textbook for the study of the Greek language was the copy of the Hebrew Scriptures, a complete version of the Law and the Prophets, including the Psalms, which had been presented to them on leaving Egypt. There were only 2 complete copies of the Scriptures in Greek in all Nazareth, and the possession of one of them by the carpenter's family made Joseph's home a much sought place and enabled Jesus, as he grew up, to meet an almost endless procession of earnest students and sincere truth seekers. Before this year ended, Jesus had assumed custody of this priceless manuscript, having been told on his 6th birthday that the sacred book had been presented to him by Alexandrian friends and relatives, and in a very short time he could read it readily.
Amazing.
Okay. Yeah, that is amazing. So that's how he learned to read the scriptures right back then. Now, I want to share something with y'all, and I'm going to preface it by telling you what I'm fixing to show you is not exactly correct all the way through as far as I know, okay? Which is a big thing, okay? So let me find the right window here. Here it is, okay. I'm gonna share it out with y'all. Okay. This is from the Urantia Book version, our version of the Urantia Book on the Fellowship. And what I wanted to show y'all is this. You see this little link here?
Yes.
It's a link to calendars of every year of Jesus' life.
Okay, cool.
Okay, compared to our calendar. And I had to preface that I can't guarantee that every single one of them is perfectly correct because there was a change because of the leap years, and I am not sure after where the leap year fell during his life. So I can't guarantee every single one of them, but I tried to check each date in the references of the Urantia book. In the Urantia book, it gives us specific dates of things that happened.
Correct.
So whenever I could, I checked the calendar with the dates of the things they said had happened, because it would sometimes say on Wednesday, Sunday, September, such and such happened, right? So I cross-checked them as many as I could, the best I could. So I can't guarantee they're 100% accurate, but until some other scholar comes along and cross-checks them, this is the best we can get right now. Okay. And I just don't have the time after going through it once to go back through them and check every single one of them. But when you see a reference in the Urantia book on a Wednesday or a Tuesday or a Saturday, this happened, and it gives you a date, I have cross-checked as many as I could with these calendars. But these calendars are linked wherever it mentions something in the book itself. So, for instance, if we're in this paragraph and it says during the calendar year of 1 BC, there will be a calendar link above that paragraph to get to it.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good.
This is on the website that you have?
That's on the fifth, it's on both the Fifth Epical Revelation Fellowship website, which the link is underneath the YouTube videos under the description, or it's also on the Atlanta Urantia Study Group website. It's all exactly the same. Both of them have these links because the papers that's on both of these websites are duplicates. Okay, so everything I tell you about on the Fifth Epical Revelation Fellowship website is exactly like the Atlanta Urantia Study Group website. The Fifth Epical, though, is a .com, and the Atlanta Urantia Study Group is a .org. Okay, so, right. I know it sounds confusing, but that's the only way I could figure out how to share it with y'all. So let's go back in here and share again. To the right. All right, that should put us back, right? Everybody's back where they were. Oh, okay. So let's just read. Gary, would you take the next? Wait, hang on. Let me change the screen here. Oh, and after this one, there is a picture too.
Oh, good. Oh,
Okay, and this is Jesus and John. See, John's a little bit older. They made him much older. He's not that much older.
maybe like 10 years older.
Yeah. And this is by Alessandro Filippi di Baccelelli, Florence, 1445 to 1510. All right. I just stuck these pictures in there because I thought it'd be more interesting with some pictures to see. Okay, let's keep moving. Gary, would you take that one, please?
Okay. The first great shock of Jesus' young life occurred when he was not quite 6 years old. It had seemed to the lad that his father, at least his father and mother together, knew everything. Imagine, therefore, the surprise of his inquiring child when he asked his father the cause of a mild earthquake which had just occurred. To hear Joseph say, "My son, I really do not know." Thus began that long and disconcerting disillusionment in the course of which Jesus found out that his earthly parents were not all wise and all knowing.
Yeah.
Okay, so reality set in on them, right?
Yeah.
Because Joseph didn't know everything. So when y'all ask me a question and I don't know, don't be shocked, right?
No, we don't have we know better. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I want to put your mind at ease.
Okay. This is a picture of Jesus and Joseph in the workshop with Mary sitting next to him out in the workshop.
See, I told you. See the red hair? I
Yeah.
told you Joseph had red hair.
Well, it's kind of sandy blonde, but that's okay. All right. Let's see here. Who's next? I believe you're back up again, dear.
Who, me? Diane.
Joseph's first thought was to tell Jesus that the earthquake had been caused by God. But a moment's reflection admonished him that such an answer would immediately be provocative of further and still more embarrassing inquiries. Even at the early age, it was very difficult to answer Jesus' questions about the physical or social phenomena by thoughtlessly telling him that either God or the devil was responsible. In harmony with the prevailing belief of the Jewish people, Jesus was long willing to accept the doctrine of good spirits and evil spirits as the possible explanation of mental and spiritual phenomena. But he very early became doubtful that such unseen influences were responsible for the physical happenings of the natural world.
Roger, you're on mute.
I said that I could spend an hour on this one, but I'm not going to. But the point is this, people have said for years and years and years, every earthquake, every storm, every tornado, God made this happen, God made that happen, God did this, God did that. And he's gotten a lot of credit for things that he didn't do. Okay. And that's the point of this. Natural phenomena of the planet is natural phenomena on the planet. It's not the will of God. It's not the movement of God or anything like that. It's just the way evolution, the planet will do its own normal evolution of time. And during this evolutionary period, these are the things that will happen. Okay, so if you go out and say God bought me a new house, I hate to tell you, he didn't do that. Okay, he's not Santa Claus. There's a big difference between Santa Claus and God. All right, Gary.
I always like it when a tornado hits a town and the family next door gets spared, and everybody says God was watching over them, but God slaughtered the people next door, though.
That's right. Yeah, if he saved them, then he killed all the rest of them, right? It works both
What
ways.
you're saying is that God is a laissez-faire individual, and that's why he gives us free will to decide our own fate.
That's right. God gives us free will to make our own decisions, and our fate is our fate. In other words, he doesn't interfere with our life process. He lives with us through those life processes, doesn't he? As the thought adjuster dwells within you, God dwells within you.
Oh, I know why now we have sin.
Yeah.
So God can experience it.
No, that's because
Yes,
we
I
have
was just messing with you.
Yeah, we have sin because we make poor choices, right? That's all there's to it.
I'm just messing with you.
I know. I know. We'd like to blame it on God because we make some really stupid decisions in life, don't we?
I'm good at it.
I was sitting with Diane and having our coffee the other morning, and I looked over and I said, we really do make some really ignorant decisions growing up, because if you look at your teenage years and things like that and things you did wrong, you regret now. But by the time you get to adulthood, you realize these were learning lessons, but it still doesn't stop the fact that you made that stupid mistake, whatever it was, back when you were younger, because you didn't have enough sense to avoid those things. You really do. So it's at least one thing happens. You gain wisdom over time. Okay, and that's what makes the big difference. At least most of us is supposed to. Sometimes I look at some of the people around and I think, maybe they don't. Man, I could be lying about that. So, okay. Let's see who's up. Who just read?
Diane.
Huh?
Diane did.
Diane did? Okay, then Pam's up.
Before Jesus was 6 years of age, in the early summer of 1 BC, Zacharias and Elizabeth and their son John came to visit the Nazareth family. Jesus and John had a happy time during their first visit within their memories. Although the visitors could remain only a few days, the parents talked over many things, including the future plans for their sons. While they were thus engaged, the lads played with blocks in the sand on top of the house, and in many other ways enjoyed themselves in true boyish fashion.
And I'm sure they didn't discuss anything about their coming missions, did they? Because they were children.
course not.
They did children things. All right.
They
And
didn't even know who they were.
no, they really didn't. And it's another interesting things is the parents of both of these boys, because Joseph, now Mary was around during the time of Jesus, but Zacharias was not, and neither was his mother. So they didn't get to see what John ended up coming into and what he became, because they both passed before that happened because they were elderly, but when this all started. So, and because of the accident of Joseph, his father didn't get to see what happened with him either. All right. Interesting how that worked out that way. But it gave Jesus the opportunity to raise a family, which would not have happened if Joseph would have survived. So, you can't say that God made that happen, but the circumstances worked out so that it benefited Jesus greatly, right? Okay. Let's go on to the next one. Rodney, I think you're up next, right? Yeah.
Dang. I thought this would be Gary's.
You want us to
pick the
hold this
long
for
one.
you, Gary? It's a nice long one.
I'll
it's
take it
the
for you,
long
I'll
one.
take it, Rodney.
No, I'm good.
I don't know why everybody picks on me.
That's because we all love you, Gary. If we didn't care about you, we wouldn't pick on you.
I kind of feel like that there. What's that song? Why is everybody always
Picking on me. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And Gary's thinking, don't love me so much, okay? All right.
Okay, having met John, who came from near Jerusalem, Jesus began to evince an unusual interest in the history of Israel and to inquire in great details as to the meaning of the Sabbath rites, the synagogue sermons, and the recurrent feast of commemoration. His father explained to him the meaning of these seasons. The first was the midwinter festive illumination, lasting 8 days, starting out with one candle the first night and adding one each successive night. This commemorated the dedication of the temple after the restoration of the Mosaic services of Judas Maccabee. Next came the early springtime celebration of Purim, the feast of Esther and Israel's deliverance through her. Then followed the solemn Passover, which the adults celebrated in Jerusalem whenever possible. While at home, the children would remember that no leavened bread was to be eaten for the whole week. Later came the feast of the first fruits, the harvest and gathering, and last, the most solemn of all, the feast of the new year, the Day of Atonement. While some of these celebrations and observances were difficult for Jesus' young mind to understand, he pondered them seriously and then entered fully into the joy of the Feast of Tabernacles, the annual vacation season of the whole Jewish people, the time when they camped out in leafy booths and gave themselves up to mirth and pleasure.
Okay. A lot in this paragraph, and I'm out of time, so we're going to have to quit there for tonight. Let me unshare this. You may come back and read that again next time and go over it then more thoroughly, because I don't have time to explain anything. Okay, there we go. We're back up. So, Letch, would you like to read our prayer of acceptance for us tonight?
Yes. I believe that God is my paradise Father, and that only by faith am I saved. No sacrifice is necessary. By this same faith, I became a child of God, and know that all men and women are my brothers and sisters. We know the Son of God, the sovereign of our universe of Nebadon, as Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. By allowing the will of God to become my will, I will someday stand in the presence of the Paradise Father. In the name of Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.
Amen.
And thanks everyone for joining us from home. Please come see us again. If you're listening us through Facebook or YouTube or Vimeo, please subscribe to the channel. Help us with our visits. Click that that little bell button. And we will plan on seeing everyone again on Thursday, Tuesday. See everyone on Tuesday again. Okay. Thanks, y'all. I
Yeah, have a
appreciate
good
it.
weekend. I love you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All.
Love
Good
you
night.
guys.
Good
All
Good
right.
to see you all. Take care.
Good
All
night.
right.
Good night.
Bye. Huh? It's Dr. Rogers' note taker. Oh, yeah. All right, let me exit here.